Matt Guys here on Birds 365, and we are lucky enough to get a couple good minutes to spend with the most intrepid reporter in Philadelphia. You see him everywhere on
Intrepid. I like
intrepid. He is stone cold intrepid. He's John Clark from NBC jumping in with us here on Birds 365. Johnny, how's the injury? We tried to get you on last week. Said, Jody, love to come on. I'm doing rehab. What are you rehabbing on?
I got a little elbow tear from tennis elbow.
There we go.
I'm getting old, so
that wasn't from Nick Sirianni beating you up on the tennis court, was it?
He's complaining about being old with us two guys. Stop it, Clark. You're not going to get away with that with us.
I need a little load management with my tennis game. I can't play 4 days a week.
Tennis elbow. Yeah, John Clark, you're going to have to retire. Unlike Jason Kelce, you got to manage that, and you can keep going. Load management is very big. Happy new league year to you, John Clark. Eagles making some moves yesterday, the most notable one being James Bradberry, getting him back. Most of us didn't see that coming. Did you see it coming, John?
I'll be honest, no. But, James Bradberry said he had better offers from several other teams. So what this tells me is the Eagles are fielding competitive offers to C.J. Gardner-Johnson and James Bradberry, but another team comes in and goes above the amount that the Eagles really will pay. It takes a player also saying, I'm going to turn down bigger offers from other teams. So you can give credit to the Eagles organization, the run they had, the defense, and the culture, because James Bradberry, if he just took the money, he would be somewhere else and not staying with the Eagles.
All right, so let's play this to its next step. Assuming that the Eagles were close, that if there were offers out there better than Bradberry, and I believe him because he's an honest guy, how much bigger? Yeah, we'll probably never know. But there were offers bigger, and he took at least slightly less to come back here and play in Philadelphia. If there's someone out there that's giving a better offer than the Eagles to C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but the Eagle offer is close, will he do the same thing as Bradberry and come back here to Philadelphia just because he likes the team, his teammates, the coaching staff, whatever else?
That's a great question. We're going to find out. Who knows? You don't know what is in each individual person when it comes down to that moment. Bradberry, you could tell he really liked being in Philly. And last year he chose the Eagles late after he got released by the Giants. And he said, you know what? This is the place that I want to be. I think they can win. And Bradberry, obviously, he wants to win. Loves Jalen Hurts, loves the situation, says he likes going against A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts every day in practice and Devontae Smith. So we're going to find out if C.J. Gardner-Johnson is that kind of guy. But you saw that the safety market, once Jesse Bates signed, the other guys aren't getting near that level, $8-9 million a year. So we'll see. Maybe he gets $10 million a year, $12 million a year, $11 million a year, somewhere in there. But we're going to find out. And I think there's a good possibility that happens as well. And I think if you can get Bradberry and GJ to come back, I think that's a win for the Eagles based on the cap space that they had going into this.
Yeah, and I think that, what do you think of the timing, the fact that T.J. Edwards was off the market in 16 minutes, John? We all knew Javon Hargrave was going to get a big deal. He got $21 million. He was off the market quickly. A lot of us thought C.J. would be off the market very quickly. But as it goes on and lingers, I'm starting to think, well, the Eagles are probably getting him back. Do you think the timing of that is a positive for the Eagles?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think as long as it goes on, I do think that, okay, they haven't received that huge offer that blows them away to sign with somebody. So, yeah, I do think this plays into the Eagles' favor. And when you go back to T.J. Edwards, you look at the contract and you say, well, man, I mean, that was something that the Eagles could have done, and maybe he could have gotten a bigger, better offer. But that leads me to believe that T.J. Edwards, to a degree, wanted to go back home to Chicago, or wanted to go back to where he grew up rooting for the Bears and was wearing the Bears jerseys and was just in awe of the Bears players. So I think maybe that tugged at his heartstrings. But yeah, I agree. I think the longer this goes on, I think CJ Gardner-Johnson could be back. Who knows what's going on, but I don't think they've received that offer that they were looking for.
All right, that'll be very interesting to see because you're not the first to espouse that theory. And I don't know whether to put any weight on that whatsoever. Oh, he had to go home. That's why TJ Edwards is here. He wanted to go home. I got no idea if he grew up a Bears fan. And I knew where he grew up, but it doesn't mean he was a Bears fan.
Oh,
he
yeah.
Was.
Bears
he
fan.
was.
Oh,
he was a big Bears fan.
He idolized those linebackers especially and the legendary Bears players. Yeah. So that could be the case.
All right, we'll see if because if that's the case, he will certainly say it because there's no better way to start a new spot in a new town than sucking up to the fan base in the town.
And TJ Smart, he will suck up to the fan
he'll go with that one. All right, speaking of TJ Edwards, this just popped into my mind. I haven't even contemplated it, so I need an answer from both you two guys. Who's getting the green dot next year?
Well, great question. That's
John Bradley was on Twitter this morning talking about it. I don't know about that. That's going to happen. My assumption, my very, very early assumption, and Sean Desai hasn't even, gotten these players together, would be Nakobe Dean. I mean, he's, he did it at college. That's why he's here. Middle linebacker. That would be my early guess, John Clark. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and I tell you, Nakobe Dean is one of the more impressive young kids coming out of college that you'll meet. I mean, the engineering background that he had in school and his mother pushing him to do all the community work. And he was as addicted to the classroom work as he was to football because of his mother and his family background. So he's incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent. That would be a big step, though, to have him call the defense. But I do think that is a good name and a good possibility.
Right. John likes to use the phrase that he learned from Jim Schwartz, startup costs. And I think you have to at least factor in some startup costs, even though he has been here. You're not a rookie, but he hadn't played all that much. And, oh, by the way, we're going to put you in charge and make it a leader of the defense. That's the pile, a lot of startup costs on one plate.
That is a lot. But, like with what we're losing here with Javon Hargrave, you see, you want to see the young guys, Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, step up. And really, I think through the years, John, being around the Eagles as much as you are, I remember Andy Reid and some other guys saying that defensive tackle is a hard position to jump right into. And you can see a huge jump from year one to year two with defensive tackles. So hopefully that happens with Jordan Davis.
Yeah, I mean, that defense as a whole, John, I realize people are disappointed because of the final 30 minutes of the Super Bowl. But if you take a step back, number 2 ranked defense in the NFL, and all of a sudden, you're talking right up the middle, Javon Hargrave, TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, Marcus Epps, who, played almost 100% of the snaps. He was out there 99% of the time. All these guys are gone. We're talking about the green dot. Some have shifted towards safeties. Marcus Epps would have been a candidate if they were able to get him back. But he's gone. How do you replace all these guys with the new defensive coordinator and with these expectations where number 2 and 70 sacks wasn't good enough? I feel sorry for Sean Desai. Am I jumping the gun?
Hey, look, it's good. I mean, this defense is going to be remade, and the only way you get better is by drafting really good young players. And we're going to have to see it with Jordan Davis. We're going to have to see it with Nakobe Dean, a first and a third round draft pick, and then that number 10 selection, the late round pick in the first round. You're going to have to see them draft good young players. And will they have as much of a rotation next year? Because you're a little thinner on that defensive line. And you're counting on Brandon Graham again. And who knows? Fletcher Cox could be back on another 1-year deal, but who knows? So you are going to be thinner. You need to see Milton Williams take that next step. And do you think he can? I think he can. But can he at the level of taking so many more reps? That's the question to me, because last year they had the absolute perfect system for the defensive line where you were rolling almost 2 defensive lines.
Yeah.
And you could come in the fourth quarter. Brandon Graham's coming in as the closer in a lot of games, so fresh against the offensive line. They're going to miss a lot of that depth next year.
All right, Johnny Clark, multiple choice crystal ball question for you for the Eagles next year. The individual who will have the most carries for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023 will be Kenny Gainwell, Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, a to-be-determined running back drafted by the Eagles, high as the first round, maybe a 7th rounder, and they find the next Isaiah Pacheco, or none of the above. Who's going to be the leader in carries for the Philadelphia Eagles next year?
Great question. Kenny Gainwell. I heard Howie, Roseman, Nick Sirianni, they love Kenny Gainwell. And you saw a shift in the playoffs, especially. He was getting more carries. And, boy, I tell you, it's a shame that the NFL works this way, especially with running backs, because Miles Sanders ran hard last year. And he had a great year, 5th most yards in the NFL. But you always saw that statistic that Miles Sanders, I believe, was 1 or 2 in the NFL yards before contact. That means the offensive line is the best or the second best in the NFL at creating holes and creating space for their running back. So I think Kenny Gainwell is a guy they really, really love. Rashad Penny, I think this is a good signing. I haven't seen money on it yet, but they have probably taken a chance, and he's taken a chance that he can kind of resurrect his career as far as how much he was injured. But I think if you bring him in spurts, you keep him healthy. He had a torn knee. He had a broken leg. So you want to keep him as healthy as possible. Load management with Rashad Penny.
And I think John Clark with the bad elbow can get 750 behind this offensive line. So I think anybody's got, and Jalen Hurts is a part of that as well, John, because he puts such stress on the opposing defense. It makes it easier for the running backs. The Eagles got Rashad Penny for 1 year, $1.6 million, can go up for $2.1 million. So basically very low risk, high reward. But, the guy's missed 38 games in 4 years. And people would complain when Miles Sanders would miss 2 in a season. Miles has got to get on the field. I don't know if they can count on Rashad Penny. Can they count on Kenny Gainwell to be that lead back? Because he's 5'8". There's some size issues. I think he's a great third down back. He's a great change of pace guy. I don't think they utilize him as much as they should as a receiver. But do you really think he can hold up getting 15, 20 carries a game that Miles was getting last year?
Well, we saw Kenny Gainwell get, 12, 13, 14 a game in the playoffs. Look, I don't think so, but we have seen and we have heard Nick Sirianni say that Miles Sanders was the lead back, but he does like running back by rotation. And I think we might see that to the nth degree this coming year. I think you're going to see them all get mixed in. And like you said, draft a running back. I had heard the name going into this, Kareem Hunt. Don't know what the situation is. I know they really love his ability running the ball, catching the ball in the backfield. Kareem Hunt is still out there, but I would think that if they draft a running back, you're going to really see a running back by rotation and keep those guys real fresh. Remember the trio back in the day? Deuce Staley, Terrell Buckhalter. And who was the third?
It was Deuce. It was Deuce, Carell, Buckhalter.
Shoot, why are we forgetting?
Oh man,
no, it was mainly Deuce and Carell. That was more of a duo.
No, John, there was a 3-headed monster.
Was it the beginning of Westbrook?
Might have been. That might have been right when Bright took off. You're right.
Yeah. So
I was thinking of the Corey Clement rookie season. when it was Jay Hajahi, LeGarrette Blount, and Corey Clement at the big Super Bowl. Even though that was not a catch, I hate to break it to everyone.
Yeah, we can agree on that one. All right, John, I know that you've been covering the guy and talking to the guy forever. Jason Kelce comes back. I shouldn't say we knew, but John and I both were leaning toward him coming back rather than calling it a career, and that's exactly what happened. He's getting paid the way he's supposed to. He's the best center in football, so why shouldn't he make top of the market money? And he is at $14 million. How much of an effect does he have on his team? We talk about this all the time, and I never played offensive line. I wasn't big enough. You're not physically big enough. McMullen's not tall enough. None of us were going to play on the offensive line, so I can't give any personal input to this, but just being around the guy, how important was it that Jason Kelce came back for another year?
I think it's so huge because on both sides of the ball, you need leaders. And you saw Jason Kelce just with his toughness. I mean, John was probably there at MetLife 2 seasons ago.
Oh, yeah.
And
I thought his season was over, John.
Yeah, taken out of the game. But all you see him do on the sideline, he is roaming around. He is basically getting ready to force himself to go back in, no matter what was hurting. You see that big apparatus he's got on his elbow. You see him playing hurt all the time. He brings a toughness to this team. And a guy looks around and says, well, if Jason Kelce's out there, he's banged up, he's hurting, he's sore. I got to be out there for the team. So he sets the tone for toughness for the team, but also intelligence. I mean, he knows how to play center and offensive line, and he's so intelligent. And it's interesting because I did a podcast with him in October, and I just put the clip on Twitter again, and I asked him if he thought he was a Hall of Famer, because his brother certainly is going to be. And Jason didn't seem to think so, because he said that Jeff Stoutland and playing next to great guards has really enabled him to be the great player that he is. And he says, I'm a really good player. I have a really good skill set, but I have a lot of weaknesses. And he said Stoutland draws up the offensive line basically to hide those weaknesses and exploit his tremendous strengths. And I thought that was fascinating because he's a very humble guy when he's saying that. And we think that he definitely has a chance to be a Hall of Famer. But you see the job that Jeff Stoutland does as offensive line coach. And if Kelce does have some size limitations against some bigger defensive tackles, boy, do they scheme it up well. So Jason Kelce is the perfect fit with this line. And you know they love to get guys in space, screen game, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So he has been so much fun to watch in space. And I think he is so vital for the leadership aspect, the toughness that he brings. And, you know, some people say, and Howie Roseman admits that he can at times get too attached to guys. But Jason Kelce to be playing at this level at his age, it's remarkable, especially through the things he's battled with.
Yeah, and you mentioned the humble nature, John. I mean, you're right. I was talking to him at the end of this season, and he said, all pro again, his fifth all pro. And he said, to us on the outside, it looks like he's never played better. And he said, no, I've slipped. I'm not the same player I was, because he's, year to year with the retirement. But I mean, he's going to the Hall of Fame. Travis is going to have company. Don't worry about that. He's going to come back. I want to talk about the defensive side, the equivalent, and that's Brandon Graham, because Brandon came back on a team-friendly deal, and you've been here for this entire run. What an interesting run. He was described early in his career as a bust. You know that, John. Everybody was talking about Earl Thomas and Jason Pierre-Paul getting drafted right after him. The Eagles are stupid. The Eagles are stupid. At the end of this season, no Eagles player in the history of this franchise would have played more games than Brandon Graham. He thought he was going to get cut when Chip Kelly was here. You know that. For Travis Long. Remember Travis Long, people? Chip was going to cut him for Travis Long, who then tore his ACL. And here we are years later with Brandon Graham. What does he mean to this organization, this locker room? Howard Eskin, your buddy, always says he's never had a bad day. I've never seen Brandon Graham have a bad day. The energy is infectious.
Yeah, and you said he's going to wind up most games played ever. Jason Kelce is going to be like 2 behind him as well.
Yeah.
So how rare is that you're going to have Brandon Graham and Jason Kelce for 13, 14 years? And look, we can talk about what he does as a football player and how he studies and breaks down an offensive tackle, how to hit a guy with a new move. And every year against Lane Johnson, because Lane Johnson has seen all of BG's moves, how can he try to beat Lane Johnson in practice? That's kind of what goes on here. And Brandon Graham, I think we can talk about that football side, but you also need a guy like Brandon Graham who, when the game is starting, he starts chirping at the other team and he loosens up Javon Hargrave. He loosens up Fletcher Cox. Those guys have a chuckle about how badly BG is going after the opponent as far as trash talking. And John, in the locker room, I think you've seen this scene many, many times where Brandon is so friendly with the media, where the media just comes in and we all get around Brandon Graham and talk to him. And then you had Javon Hargrave kind of sitting there in the locker right next to him, didn't get as much attention, maybe because he doesn't have that personality like BG. But Javon Hargrave, quieter guy, was an incredible guy for the Eagles team. Yeah. But Brandon Graham has a way of loosening up the room and keeping the room fun and bringing that personality. You need somebody who's chirping like Darius Slay does as well. Somebody who's, hey, we're going to have a great day today at practice. And BG has always been that way, like you said, every single day. And he's got one of the greatest plays, if not, well, second greatest play in Eagles history, the sack of Tom Brady.
The most important play in modern franchise history, unless you want to go back to Chuck Bednarik, but certainly the most important play.
And you know, the greatest play has got to be Philly Special, though, because of the cojones that it took in that moment. But and Zach Ertz making 2 huge 4th down catches, game-winning touchdown and 4th down catch to keep the drive going. Yeah. But yeah, BG, Jason Kelce, this is so rare that you're never going to see something like this again. In fact, I think Reuben Frank had a stat that the last guy to play his entire career with the Eagles and go to a Pro Bowl was Mike Quick. So it doesn't happen.
That is, and we love Mike, but now you're talking about a good couple of years since something has happened if you're going back to the Mike Quick days. All right, John, my last question has to do with the coach, Nick Sirianni. He's got 2 big hurdles to get over this upcoming season. One is he's going to have to deal with a pretty new coaching staff. They made some changes dictated by, not Sirianni, guys having success and wanting to go elsewhere and step up, become head coaches. Decision to move on from Denard Wilson. Some of it is certainly sitting on Sirianni's plate, but he's going to have to deal with it and make the new coaching staff work. The other one is expectations. When you go to the Super Bowl and you give up the lead with 10 seconds to go, 59 minutes and 50 seconds, and you come this close to winning, guess what? Expectations are ratcheted up coming into this year, which is a bigger hurdle. After going with a season of no coaching changes, pretty drastic coaching changes season to season, and the fact that, the expectations are now Super Bowl or bust, which is going to be more difficult for Sirianni this season.
I think the whole idea of trying to get back to the Super Bowl after losing in the Super Bowl, it is so difficult to lose a Super Bowl. You go that far and you put everything you have into it and you lose. You have to get yourself going again for an entire run, knowing that you did all of that work. You put your body through all that, but yet you still lost and didn't get it done. I remember Ken Hitchcock with the Flyers saying that was the hardest thing ever. When you have that journey, you get to the mountaintop, but you lose. And then you try to get your motivation going for an entire season, and you become the hunted, and you have a much, much tougher schedule, and you lose players, and you have guys who want more money. Nothing against Darius Slay. He wants more money, but that always happens. Guys want more. Mm-hmm. They want more commercials. Yeah. They want more money. That's what happens when you get to the Super Bowl. So I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to get this team completely motivated again to get over the hurdle and win a Super Bowl, knowing how tough the journey is and the departures you're going to have. Luckily, most are back on offense, pretty much everybody. Maybe Isaac Seumalo's gone. But I think that's the toughest hurdle, is trying to get back there. It just doesn't happen in sports. It's so difficult to go back after you lose in the championship.
All right. He is the great John Clark at J Clark NBCS. Follow him there. NBC Sports Philadelphia, NBC Philadelphia, NBC 10, 6 and 11. You can watch him there. You know me, John. You know what their last question is going. Nothing to do with the Eagles. Give me a good Paul Heyman story to end it out today. Give me one of your favorite Paul Heyman stories.
Wow. Paul Heyman. Yeah, I mean, I worked for Paul Heyman in college with ECW, and I guess I would just say, you know, Paul Heyman was this kind of guy.
Do you have some uncashed checks back in the ECW days?
Well, there are some checks that I still haven't gotten, so I'm waiting on a couple of checks. I would just say Paul Heyman is the kind of guy who. He would tape an ECW show at Cabrini College to start on a Friday night, and he would not sleep until that show was in the can and ready to go and ready to air by Monday night. You're talking about Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday. He would go through the whole thing without sleeping, and you would get a call at 2 a.m., and that would wind up being a 2.5 hour conversation with him, breaking down possible storylines. I don't think the man slept. And it was kind of like going to see The Godfather sometimes. You would come into his hotel room in Philly and the shades would all be drawn. It was very dark. And I'm like, I'm going to see The Godfather here. So he was intimidating, but one of the most intelligent people I have ever come across. He's a mad genius, but he did not sleep for like 3 or 4 days getting the ECW shows ready.
And that's why the guy's been in the business for 40 years, because he's just as good as he is at what he does and still doing it today. A main storyline for the WWE. Johnny Clark, always a pleasure. Appreciate you jumping in, bud. We will certainly get you back on as the offseason rolls along. We'll be watching you on every NBC Philly outlet we can find. We thank you for coming in with us today. Talk to you, bud.
You got to appreciate it. If I could get a quick plug for my podcast, I got
Please.
Joe Banner on, talking about Jalen Hurts' new contract and why he would go shorter for Jalen Hurts, why Jalen should go shorter, and why the Eagles want a longer contract probably. So
who said Jalen should go shorter? I apologize.
Joe Banner. Joe Banner.
Oh, Banner. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
luck.
So listen to that takeoff with
he's
John
still
Clark.
Thinking like an executive. He's not an agent just yet. You know, when he gives you information, he does give you both sides. But when push comes to shove, he's still a guy who's going to do the right thing by the team. Jalen's not taking a short-term deal. Always a pleasure, Johnny Clark. Thank you much.
Thanks, John.
Keep up the great work. Thanks for having me on. See you guys.
John Clark from NBC here with us on Bird.
No, Joe, by the way, he does give you more of the agent side. Like he's saying Jalen Hurts, because I've heard him say that as well, should take a shorter contract to get back on the market because the money's just going to explode over the next 5 years. Because remember, the TV deal's already done. So you can project out how much it's going to go up, the salary cap each and every season. So you've seen a lot of shorter term deals for players who want to get back on the market quickly, because if you're a 25-year-old player and you can get back on the market at 28 and you're still a good player, you're going to make a hell of a lot more money. So,
all right, well, then I would challenge both you and Joe Banner to give me a guy who fits that description, not just this offseason, because we're all of 2 days in and there's a Lamar Jackson decision yet to be made, but give me a guy over the last couple of years who did that. Was expected to get 4 or 5, took 2 or 3, did better because of it, because he got back out onto the market.
Did better? That's a good question. But you see, I would say this year, there's been many more than ever before. 4-year deals. Who's the kid from Arizona who signed, the cornerback? He signed a 2-year deal. He's 25 years old. Got $11 million. He'll be back on the market At 27, there's an example. He signed late last night, and could he have gotten 3-4 years? I would think so at his age. And he signed a 2-year deal for $11 million. Byron Murphy. So it's happening more now than it ever has in the past. 3 and used to be 5-year deals, Jody. Used to be, now they weren't really 5-year deals. We all know most NFL contracts are really 2-year deals anyway. Occasionally, if you're a quarterback, you can get more security than those 2 years. But the teams always wanted that. And now agents are working towards lesser because they know where the salary cap is going, because the TV deals are locked in, and they know where the salary cap is going.
All right. I'll suggest that the teams are not offering the lengthy deals that they may once have offered and tried to drag salary cap out space over the length of a contract. If you and Joe Banner think it's the players making that decision to go shorter rather than longer,
well, it's the agents telling him,
right? Agent. When I say players, I mean players and agents. I'll suggest it's as much, if not more so, the teams looking to go short term and keeping salary cap flexibility in place. All right, Jody Mac, Johnny Mac coming back. We're running late because we had 2 good guests today, so we'll come back, put a bow in the show. But before you go, don't leave, because I got a great question for John to answer to end the show. So you got to stick around for it. You got to hit the like button before you